Chapter 11. Lost and Found. Sara had left her note on the table, hoping it would get taken and delivered with the supper dishes. Sure enough, that evening when she came back to her room, the note was gone. The magicians had received her thanks, and Sara was happier for the thought. Sara was reading one of her new books aloud to Becky, just before bedtime, when her attention was attracted by a sound at the skylight. When she looked up from her page, she saw that Becky had heard the sound also. "Something's there, miss," Becky said nervously. "It sounds rather like a cat on the roof, trying to get in." Sara went to the skylight. It was a queer little sound she heard, like a soft scratching. She climbed on the chair, very cautiously opened the skylight, and peeped out. It had been snowing all day. On the new fallen snow, quite near her, crouched a tiny, shivering creature. "It is the monkey that belongs to Ram Dass," Sara cried. "Who is Ram Dass?" Becky asked. "The Lascar. I mean, the manservant of the English gentleman next door. Servants who are men are called Lascars in India." "Are you going to let the monkey in, miss?" Becky asked in a frightened voice. "Oh, yes. It is much too cold for monkeys to be outside. They are very delicate creatures. He must have crept out of the other attic and come here when he saw our light. Help me coax him inside." Sara put her hand out and spoke to the monkey as she often spoke to the sparrows when she fed them, as if she, too, were some friendly little animal who understood his timid wildness. "Come along, monkey darling," she cooed. "I would never hurt you." Sara laid her hand gently on his back and drew him toward her. The monkey had felt this kind of human love in the slim brown hairs of Ram Dass. He now felt the same tender affection in Sara's hand. He let her lift him through the skylight. When he found himself in her arms, he clung closely to her and took friendly hold of a lock of her hair. The monkey was evidently glad to get to the fire. When Sara sat down and held him on her knee, he looked from her to Becky with interest and appreciation. Nice monkey, Sara crooned as she petted his funny head. "I love little animals like you so much." "He is plain looking, miss, ain't he?" Becky remarked, doubtful that she would ever want to hold such a thing. "He does indeed look like a very ugly baby." "What are you going to do with him, miss?" "I shall let him sleep at the bottom of my bed tonight. Tomorrow morning I will take him back to the Indian gentleman first thing." When she and Becky said good night a short while later, the monkey made for himself a nest of Sara's robe at the foot of the bed, and curled up at her feet as if he were very pleased to be spending the night there. The next morning, Sara slipped out of the seminary with the monkey under her coat. When she arrived at the Indian gentleman's house, Ram Dass seemed delighted to see both her and the monkey. He quickly ushered Sara into his master's study. Sara entered the room with the monkey in her arms. The creature evidently did not intend to be parted from his new friend, if it could be helped. He clung to Sara and chattered away. The excitement of finding both the Indian gentleman and the father of the large family all together in the same warm room she had so often gazed at from outside the window brought a flush to Sara's cheeks. "Your monkey ran away again, sir," Sara said as she curtsied prettily. "He came to my window late last night. I took him in right away because it was so cold. I would have brought him back to you immediately if it had not been so late. I did not wish to disturb you." "That was very thoughtful of you," replied the invalid by the fire. The gentleman's hollow eyes dwelt upon Sara with a sort of intense curiosity or interest. Sara looked toward Ram Dass, who stood near the door. "Shall I give the monkey to your Lascar?" she asked. "How do you know he is a Lascar?" the gentleman inquired, smiling slightly. "I was born in India," Sara replied simply. The Indian gentleman sat bolt upright so suddenly in his chair, and had such a change of expression on his face, that Sara was quite startled. "You were born in India, you say? But you live next door." Something seemed to be the matter. "Yes, I live at Miss Minchin's select seminary for young ladies." "But you are not one of her pupils?" "I do not know exactly what I am at the present time." "Why not? What do you mean?" "At first I was a pupil, a parlor boarder, but now—" "You were once a pupil? What are you now?" "I sleep in the attic. I run errands. I do anything anyone asks. And I teach the little ones their lessons in French and in history." "Question her, Carmichael," the Indian gentleman said suddenly to the father of the large family. "Ask her everything, down to the last detail. I have not the strength to do it. The excitement is too much for me right now. I feel ill. The Indian gentleman collapsed back into the depths of his armchair. Ram Dass brought his master a glass of water. "What do you mean by 'at first,' my child?" began Mr. Carmichael with an encouraging smile. "When I was first taken to the seminary by my papa." "Where is your papa now?" "He died," Sarah said very quietly. "He lost all of his money, and so there was none left for me. There was no one to take care of me or to pay Miss Minchin for my room and board." "How did your father lose his money?" the Indian man broke in, gasping for breath. "He did not lose it himself. He had a friend he was very fond of. He was very fond of him, and he trusted him. It was his friend who took his money. He trusted his friend too much." "But the friend did not mean to do him harm. It happened through a mistake," the Indian man said. "The suffering was just as bad for my father," Sarah replied. "It killed him. He died of brain fever." "What was your father's name? Tell me, I cannot bear it." "His name was Ralph Crewe," Sarah answered, feeling very startled and strange. "He died in India 2 years ago." "Carmichael!" the invalid gasped. "It is the child! The child! His child! We have found her at last!" For a moment, Sarah thought the Indian gentleman was going to die. Ram Dass leaped to his master's side with another glass of water. Sarah stood nearby, trembling a little. She looked in a bewildered way at Mr. Carmichael. "What child am I?" she faltered. "This gentleman is Mr. Carrisford, your father's friend. When it seemed that the diamond mines were failing, he became ill with fever, like your father did. Mr. Carrisford was taken to the hospital, where he lay raving mad with fever for weeks. Unfortunately, when he recovered, he remembered very little of what had happened. The fever had given him amnesia, you see, erasing much of his memory. He knew your father had died and could not forgive himself, but he remembered little else. The rest of his memory came back slowly and in pieces. By the time he remembered that Ralph Crewe had spoken to him of his little girl in boarding school, 6 months passed. No matter how hard he tried, he could not remember where your father had said the school was located. We have been looking for you in every major city in Europe, as far away as Russia. And now at last we have found you. Or rather, you have found us." Sarah put her hand up to her forehead. Her mouth trembled as her eyes filled with tears. She spoke as if she were dreaming. "And I was at Miss Minchin's all the while," she said feebly. "Just on the other side of the wall."